What did your crush do that absolutely killed your interest? Viewers Edition. Story 1. Okay, so this was in 9th grade, 2019. For those who don't want to read the whole part, because this is going to be long, she falsely accused me of assault, and I never talked to her again. I had a family friend. We were born just a month apart. Our families lived pretty close by, so we had known each other since 1st grade, and I always liked her and thought she liked me too, but wasn't sure. We were in the same class during 9th grade, and she sat in front of me with her best friend. I'm from India, so depending on the school, 2 or 3 students sit together at the same bench. But whenever she wanted anything, for example, if she forgot to bring her pen, she would always ask me, or if she wanted to know the time, she would turn around and ask me, even though her friend had a watch. Seeing how she behaved around me made me sure that she liked me, and I decided to confess. So one fine afternoon, I confessed to her, to which she didn't give me an answer and walked off. I had already said what I wanted to say, so I didn't push her further and waited patiently for the answer. A few days later, she comes to my house and invites me to her brother's birthday party. I went there with my uncle. Our families were friends, so my uncle was invited too, and as soon as I reached her place, she took me to a room where we could talk privately. We sat there for a few minutes, during which she told me how happy she was that I had decided to come and that she wanted to talk about my confession. She told me that some other guy had also confessed to her and asked me what she should do. I told her to do whatever she wanted and choose whomever she liked. I had intended to stop chasing after her if she rejected me. Before I could hear her decision, her mother called her out of the room and took her somewhere. I waited for her, and after reaching the conclusion that she wasn't going to come back, I decided to go back with my uncle, as it was getting late. I met her the next day at school, and she told me that her family was really angry with her for talking to a guy alone in a room. Her family was more conservative than mine, and she thought that we shouldn't talk to each other anymore, and made me swear that I wouldn't tell a single soul about the incident that night. I respected her wishes and stopped talking to her. We graduated, and the next year we couldn't meet because of COVID and lockdown. After that, I changed schools and moved to a different city for my higher studies. There, I found out from a mutual friend that she was now dating another guy and had told her then-boyfriend that I had tried to force her into doing it with her that night, and that she had refused me and I had left her place after her giving me a pep talk about consent. I assure you that did not happen. Fortunately, I had known her boyfriend and decided to talk to him. I told him the truth, and he decided to confront the girl. After a little probing, she told him the truth, and he broke up with her. I haven't talked to her or seen her since. I also found out from her boyfriend, now ex, that she used to talk poop about me to all her friends. Like, what did I do to you to deserve this? That little lie of hers could have destroyed my life completely. Girls are scary. Edit. Hey guys, thanks for your supportive words. Now I've got an update. Her ex-boyfriend called me. Apparently she called him to ask for my contact info. He refused to give it to her without my knowledge. He, her ex, told her that I, me, don't have much free time to waste on her. She said, yeah, she knew what she did was wrong and thought I was cute enough to get any girl and just wanted to talk. After that, he called me to tell me about what she said, and I asked him to not share my contact info. He said he won't give it to her. P.S. Her ex is a total bro. Story 2. It's a long story, so to cut it short, this was exactly the type of person who made sarcasm into their entire personality, didn't know when to turn it off, and was openly rude about everything I had or did, expected everything to go her way without a shred of consideration for other people, only hung out with her 3 times, and killed any interest from then on. For the whole story, officially met her as we were leaving campus together, and we hit it off surprisingly well. Turned out she passed by me a couple of times at the same accommodation both of us were staying at for studies, and I briefly greeted, but hadn't noticed her much. I wasn't much interested at first, because physically she wasn't my type. I'm not really attracted to skinny women, with all due respect, but it was fun talking with her. Thought to myself that perhaps I could develop feelings the more time went, and see how it goes. The second time she came over, and after sitting on my bed, she would gradually start judging my room. It's fine, you're a student, so I didn't expect much from you anyway. She says, despite living in the same building with a similar room as me, I brushed it aside and continued the conversation. Previously, I mentioned checking out my favorite fries selling shop, shared my newly bought batch with her. Don't like me much? You can have your poopy fries, she said as she begrudgingly pushed them to my side of the bed. Gave her the benefit of the doubt, though she was saying it in a joking way. In one of our talks, she brought up the topic about past relationships with guys and boasted about her having a pretty face and knowing it. Red flag. I learned from a few acquaintances that she's the type to constantly get favors from guys, movies, food, etc., and do nothing in return, so I started to become wary of her. She knew I was an art student and took advantage by asking me excessively for drawing favors, but she honestly didn't deserve them, as she never really helped me with anything before, so I started to feel uncomfortable. Wanted to test the waters one day and asked her to eat out for lunch. Told her before that we'd go splits on the bill, and she said yes. Dessert was my treat to see how she'd react. By the time we ordered, she said she couldn't pay and thought I'd take care of it. Ended up paying for it all, and we headed to my place while eating our frozen yogurt. Not a single thank you. By that time, I had moved into a better accommodation. We arrived and started to eat on my bed. Just moved in, so not much furniture, despite a bed. Wanted to eat out, but she insisted we come to my place. The bed's kinda stiffy. My mood started to drop a lot. After taking out the food, she rejected it. Nah, I don't like it. You can take your crappy food back. From then on, I was not having it. I wasn't even looking at her way or paying attention to whatever she was saying. I wanted her to leave, and she left. Bish later had the audacity to ask to leave some of her stuff in my place the next day, said it was an emergency, so I said fine. Didn't show up, didn't say anything. Blocked, deleted her number, never spoke to her again for a while. Her most recent whereabouts? She called me during vacation out of the blue and felt disinterest from my one-word answers. The second semester rolled around, passed by her in the corridor, held eye contact for half a second, and continued walking. She came to me outside shortly after and asked me a bunch of questions as to why I ignored her, then outright slandered my living circumstances. Continued ignoring her, walked away, and never uttered a word to her ever since. Learn it from me when I say don't let these kinds of people push you over and ultimately waste your time. I made a mistake and was too patient and kind to such an individual, and I made sure to not allow such a thing to happen again. Story 3. Alright, so I'd liked this girl since middle school, until around say either sophomore or junior year, I think. Anyway, I'd been down bad, wanted to date her, and thought she was the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen. Anyway, I was the kind of guy that gave people rides home, and I was taking a friend of ours home the day after she'd invited me to a party. We'd been growing closer, so I'd been excited, so I made a joke to him about that we might get drunk and who knows what'd happen, because those types of thoughts are a part of life. However, often a lot of frickers try to vilify them. He started going on about how that'd be R and taking advantage. And I'm confused, because to my knowledge, people who may like each other do this stuff at parties. But I wasn't getting drunk anyway, since I'd planned to be the driver, so I told him, "Bro, I ain't getting drunk, it's just a joke." That got him to pop off even more. My sister was confused by him too, though she knew how much I'd cared about this girl and that I wasn't like that. So I dropped the guy off at home, thinking nothing of it until the next day, when another of our friends came up accusing me because apparently he'd been ranting about it. My blood turned to ice. I know how men are treated for these accusations, and that it was started by another guy. Well, I wasn't feeling too great. I later went and told my crush they were lying in case they came up spouting stuff like that. Explained stuff, she'd known that I'd liked her for a while, but we'd kinda just stayed friends and she'd seemed chill. So the party happens, she gets high and panics all the way to her house, no matter how much I kept reassuring her. I even waited after dropping her off to make sure she made it all the way up the road. So things progress. I get the girl a job at my work, offer to drive her because it's on the way. We spend more time together. I ask her out again after my failed attempts earlier in our friendship. She says, yeah, I'm absolutely over the moon. Though it doesn't work out. She flunked on our first date and said she wasn't feeling it. I'm like, oh, you could have just said no like all the other times. Apparently she didn't actually know I'd liked her all those other times, but I know she was lying because other friends and myself had told her. I put distance between us for a couple months. For me and her sake, after a while I decide, maybe I'll give this friendship thing another shot. The first time she gets mad, though, she mentions how it ticked her off that I'd planned to try to R her. And I'm like, what the frick? Then blocked me because I could be like, what the frick? You'd believed me when I told you they were lying? I'd try to make you feel better on the drive home from the party when you spazzed out. I'd taken you places, hung out with you for months after, and after you hurt me, I didn't freak out at you. I just put distance between us, and later tried to reconnect when I'd calmed down a little. This girl thought I was an artist. Nearly a year after. I thought I was in love with this girl. Never gonna make that mistake again. Haven't talked to her since, and oh yeah, the guy who started the rumor apologized to me for lying a little later, after his recent ex started giving him grief. I don't know anything about that situation, but he said he hadn't known how it felt. I was like, okay, hope things get better, man. Thank you for coming to my ramble. Story 4. There was this girl in college. She was mixed with multiple different races, so I had been trying to get her for a couple months, and I finally started to see progress. She started taking interest, and we would start spending time together outside of classes. One day I got in her car because she had to drive to her house, which was off campus, to get something she had left earlier that morning. It was only like a 7-minute drive from where we were, and when I drive distances less than 10 minutes, I usually don't put my seatbelt on. Or rather, I used to do that until I got in her passenger seat. She started driving with absolute reckless abandon and had zero care for pedestrians. Those 7 minutes felt like 7 hours. She literally flew down a 25-mile-per-hour zone at like 50 miles per hour, and the way she was turning had me jerking around her car uncontrollably. I swear those 7 minutes felt like my last 7 minutes on Earth. And I very quickly and quietly put on my seatbelt, and she was laughing almost maniacally. She zipped through 2 stop signs. Mind you, this is only at about 12 in the afternoon, so the campus had a lot of people walking around, and midterms were coming up. We got to her house, and she asked if I wanted to come in. I'm pretty sure she was inviting me to finally do the deed, but I told her, no, I'll just wait in the car. She asked if I was sure, and I said yes, because I had somewhere to be. I didn't. And as she went in the house, I came to the conclusion that having relations with her would probably end up in me being stabbed by her or something. Because if she had complete disregard for an entire college campus, Lord knows what she would do to someone she was actually upset at. I very much let that friendship die out before I would end up unalive. And to this day, I don't care if it's a 2-minute drive or 2-hour drive. I buckle up everywhere I go, strictly because of her. Funny what 7 minutes can do to months of work, ain't it? Story 5. I kinda lost interest in my crush just because I just found out that he was kinda delusional. At first I try to make friend with him and try to act normal because I has been confessed to him and he reject me, but he reject me in a nice way, and I understand that, since I was extrovert. I like to get along with all people, and I said to him, don't mind me if I am nervous because I am his classmates, and I try to move on from him. But he acts like he always think I have other motive, such as revenge or something. But in fact, I didn't have that. I only want to work things out. And whatever I'm focused in class, I always looks in front of the whiteboard and the teacher's talking. But since he's seated in front of me, he sometimes turn behind and look at me as if he checking me, if I even look at him. He likes sometimes he give attention and sometimes just ignoring me. And I'm really tired to work things out between us. It's only me who want to work things out anyway, and he's friend also love to tease me while saying nonsense. I know I'm sweat a lot because that's just how my body works. I sweat even I didn't do the activities. But I think he always took that as I was always nervous around him. To be truth, I'm still a little nervous around him. But I said to him it will give me a year to actually move on from him, and I hope he don't mind. But yet he's still mind. I wonder if he thinks that I'm a robot and just can't forget about these feelings for only a week, like what he expects. And now I kind of gave up befriending him because it was too frustrating and I can find other people to befriend with anyway. I don't care what he wants to think about me, but as long as I keep my distance from him, I think everything will be okay. I'll just hope I'm from a different class from him next month. Well, thanks if you read until the end. I'm wishing you a good life. Story 6. I remember being so blinded by this disease, I had interest in someone who, in reality, has no value or worth in society. She used to have some value, but then her entire personality became, I'm sad and have sad anime backstory, give me pity, which I didn't notice at the time. When I originally told her about how I felt, I told her with intent to leave because it was something I never wanted to feel and I wanted that feeling to go away. But she pulled me back in with, you don't have to feel bad, which I then asked if I'm going to stay if she could not tell anyone. Of course, lying through her teeth, she says she will, and immediately the next day tells everyone, and then goes up to me and tries to act all sorry and remorseful about it. I left again later on, and things were peaceful until she pulled me back in again. I was like, okay, whatever, and things were okay, although those feelings I had started to eat away at me like a cancer. Later on, she began to demonize me to this entire friend group, her and some other guy who is actually vile from what I've heard, despite making it crystal clear that if something I do bothers her or anyone else, I will stop. It turns out she didn't want anything to do with me since I told her, which would be fine except for the fact that she pulled me back into the group twice. I'm lucky that this all was in a dumb friend group on the internet, because with her image of being a victim of this cruel world and the way she helped to demonize me, if things were slightly different, my life could have been ruined. It was a hard lesson that I learned, and thank God the damage was minimal, as that whole friend group wasn't that good to begin with. And as far as I knew it went, I was just unlikable, despite trying to be the opposite. If you're going to pursue a relationship, be careful of who it's with. Otherwise, your safest bet is to not do it at all. Story 7. It's not shallow, and no, it doesn't make you kind of a jerk if you lose romantic interest in someone because they smoke cigarettes. I'm sure plenty of smokers are offended and upset by those who feel that way, but there's just too many reasons to avoid it. First off, it just completely saturates everything. It doesn't matter if you smoke outside, change and wash everything constantly, brush your teeth 20 times a day, etc., and you think you don't stink of it. For a non-smoker, you reek. It's not any different from body odor. Even if you don't smoke in your car or home, it will still smell like it because it's carried in on you. Then, say you do end up together and he or she refuses to stop smoking, even for the sake of your future, there's an extremely high chance you and or your children will end up as a nurse from all the health problems. Any number of heart conditions, stroke results, multiple types of cancers, emphysema, COPD, apnea, etc., etc., etc. Then there's the issues of secondhand smoke affecting you, any children you have, and your pets. Then there's the insanely obnoxious issue that most smokers throw their butts on the ground and out the car windows. That's a felony, by the way, to throw a cigarette butt still smoking and or glowing out the car window, since it can and does and has caused wildfires. It's also rude, lazy, and trashy as frick to do that. Animals ingesting that crap can cause seizures, choking, intestinal blockages, etc. And no, it's not all natural. Then you have people like me who are heavily allergic to tobacco and miserable around it. There are plenty of good, legitimate reasons for smokers to be a big turnoff. It's just like any other preference. Many people are attracted to fat and obese people who won't date from different religions or political affiliation. Some people won't date the opposite or the same sex, etc., 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 etc. We all have preferences, whether it's offensive or not. We can't help what we do and don't find attractive. Story 8. I had a girlfriend during late primary school. Yes, I'm British. She was more the quiet type with a few close friends, and I had a lot of friends and hung out with the group of guys I still hang with now. Wasn't really surprising, as most of us were good friends, since we were a class of 29. So anyway, she wanted to keep it secret, but then I started to notice some red flags. She would let this kid flirt with her. She said they were just friends. I was 100% positive he liked her. Few months later, school broke up and she spread our relationship. But she was playing out at the park behind my back with the guy. I always warned her, but she didn't listen. I was thinking about ending it, but she told me they were friends and I really liked her. But one day I couldn't take it anymore and tried to get her to stop hanging out with him. She ended things soon after. I was sad but glad I didn't get cheated on. Later, she asked him out, but he surprisingly said no after falling for another girl in our small village. Me and that guy eventually ended up being close friends. I still respect him to this day. It's been 3 or 4 years since it all happened. Me and the girl still sometimes talk due to mutual friendships, but I still don't have much interest in her like I did back then. Not the best ending, but I ended up dating some other girls. None were really long-term. None lasted more than 8 months. One even coming out as lesbian, which I didn't mind, but was surprised considering how she dated a lot of guys. Anyway, thanks for reading my fracking novel of waffling. Story 9. Was talking to this girl for a while. She was nice, cute, funny. Well, after a couple of weeks of talking, she invited me over so we could eat and then maybe go to a movie or something, and I was like, okay. Got over to her place about 3 p.m., knocked on the door and waited. Knocked again and waited. Took her 20 minutes to answer the door. Turns out she'd completely forgotten that I was even coming and had fallen asleep. Okay, kinda rude and irresponsible, but not the worst thing. So walked inside and oh my god, her apartment was nasty. The living room didn't look like it had been vacuumed in weeks. There was a pile of dishes in the sink, and the kitchen floor was sticky. But the final straw was when I asked to use the bathroom. I had to pee before we left. Walked into her bathroom and it stunk like nasty rotten meat. Looked in the little trash can next to the toilet, and there was at least a week's worth of nasty bloody tampons. They'd been in there so long that they were going rancid. We went to the movie and I dropped her off at home, then promptly never talked to her again. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.